guys, I'm Jillian, and we're Team AMIRA, which stands for Analyzing the Movement of Infants at Risk for Autism Spectrum Disorder. We're conducting research under the mentorship of Dr. Yannis Olominos of the Computer Science Department. And we lost her slide, but it's in collaboration with our librarian, Glenn Morton, and Dr. Rebecca Landa of the Kennedy Krieger Institute in Baltimore. I can give you a brief overview. Okay. So tonight I'm going to be talking to you about our research context and direction, as well as presenting our research question and hypothesis. Then I'm going to pass it on to Brendan to talk about the OptiTrack system and methodology. Then we're going to talk about our pilot test, data analysis, and our team's present outlook and goals. So the first thing you should know is that autism is part of a spectrum of disorders, including Asperger's syndrome, Rett syndrome, and other disorders. Autism spectrum disorders are currently defined by qualitative measures, including motion, social interaction, communication, and then stereotype movements and behaviors. And our team is going to focus on the motion aspect. So the importance of our study is twofold. The first aspect of the importance is the prevalence of ASD. The Center for Disease Control estimates that 1 in 110 people are affected by autism spectrum disorders. And then the second aspect of the importance of our project is that our literature review has found that the earlier that treatment is implemented, the more effective the treatment is. So the recent direction in the field has shifted from retrospective studies to prospective studies. Retrospective studies are when researchers would use children as participants who had confirmed diagnoses of autism spectrum disorder. And then they would look at videos of those children when they were infants and try and identify motion indicators that would identify them as eventually being diagnosed with ASD. So the recent shift is from retrospective to prospective studies. A prospective study compares infants at high risk and at low risk for autism spectrum disorder, but these infants don't yet have a confirmed diagnosis. So our definition for a high-risk infant based on literature is an infant with a sibling, with an older sibling that has a confirmed diagnosis of ASD. These infants are 20 times more likely than low-risk infants to eventually be diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. So then a low-risk infant is an infant who has no family history of ASD, and those are the two groups that we're comparing in our study. Our study is comparing the motion indicators of these two groups. So what we're looking at are hand orientation, head lag, visual tracking, and postural control, which Brendan will elaborate on when we discuss our methodology. And we're using motion capture technology to measure these movements. So based on literature and collaboration with experts, we've come to our research question and hypothesis. Our research question is, using motion capture technology, what significant differences in movements can be identified that reliably distinguish between infants at high risk and at low risk for autism spectrum disorder? And then our hypothesis is that there are quantifiable and consistent differences in the specific movements of infants at high risk and at low risk for autism spectrum disorders. So now I'm going to pass it to Brendan, who's going to talk about the OptiTrack system and our team's methodology.
Thank you, Jillian. So we will be working with the OptiTrack motion capture system, which consists of 12 cameras arranged as shown here. The cameras detect infrared light, which bounces off reflectors within the capture volume, which is an area around where the skeleton there is standing. And we've constructed reflectors that are effective at, they can be distinguished at very close distances that will be seen on an infrared. So right here you can see we have markers that are about 6 millimeters in diameter, and they've been mounted on Velcro bands that will be placed on joints on the infant to construct a sort of skeleton that will accurately model the infant's movement. So we're conducting differential research between infants at high risk and low risk for ASD. And we expect to recruit approximately 25 individuals for each group. So all of the infants will be aged 6 to 10 months, which is a fairly narrow developmental range. So age won't be a possible differentiator between the two groups. And also, we're looking to detect possible indicators that occur before the current diagnosis age of 18 to 24 months. So each infant participant will come to the University of Maryland for one data collection session conducted in the Keck lab in the Avionics building. So high-risk participants will be recruited primarily by Dr. Landa at Kenny Krieger Institute, while posting flyers in the infant studies labs around campus will serve to recruit our low-risk participants primarily. And all infants will go through a telephone screening to confirm their eligibility. So our hour-long motion capture session will consist of guiding the infant through 4 different tasks: a reaching task, pull to sit, visual tracking, and postural control task. And all of these tasks have been identified through our literature review and consultation with Dr. Landa. And each motion has an associated indicator that may serve to differentiate between the two groups. So in our reaching task, we will have the infant reach for a toy in front of him or her, and we will be looking at, or we'll measure the hand orientation relative to the toy. And we're going to present the infant with a cylindrical toy in both a horizontal and vertical orientation to control for if they just reach for the toy the same way all the time. In pull to sit motion, we will be pulling the infant from a supine to a sitting position and measuring degrees of head lag. In the visual tracking task, we'll be moving an object from the infant's periphery across the body to the opposite side and tracking the head movement. And finally, the postural control task consists of presenting the infant with 2 identical looking toys of varying masses and measuring the stability of balance and posture that the infant maintains when playing with the toys of different masses. Now Nathan is going to talk about our recent pilot session and data analysis techniques.
Thanks, Brendan. So we're going to show a video of our first pilot session. All right, so, so you'll see that our participant is reaching for the toy when it's held both horizontally and vertically. You'll also note that he's wearing these black bands. Those hold the reflectors that Brendan mentioned earlier. Now this over here is what the computer sees when it looks at this. Each one of these white points represents one of the reflectors. You'll note that some of the points are flickering in and out or appearing off to the side. Those are errors either in the computer system or in the cameras, or maybe just because there's something else reflective in the camera's field of view. That's obviously a problem, so we're writing an algorithm to apply a model to the data, basically asking where could the baby be at any given time. So if something shows up 3 feet to the left, we know that's obviously not part of the participant. Now once we have our data, we have to perform some tests on it. We have a number of tests identified, one of which is Welch's t-test, which is particularly useful if our 2 subject groups are of different sizes. Well, this isn't what we hope, it's a very real possibility given the realities of recruiting. The t-squared test is also particularly useful because it allows us to compare participants on multiple variables at the same time. Principal component analysis, on the other hand, allows us to take large quantities of data and break it down into smaller but still highly meaningful data points. And L1 optimization will allow us to identify clusters of PCA data, which we can hopefully use to distinguish between the two groups. And now to Jimmy with present outlook and team goals.
Thank you, Nathan. So currently we are operating with a $1,500 grant from the HHMI research program. Next weekend, we will be going to Nashville, Tennessee to participate in a research conference held by the NIM-BIOS program there, which stands for National Institute of Mathematical and Biological Synthesis. Just yesterday, we had a poster at the Bioscience Research Day. Currently we are working to improve the data analysis techniques that Nathan just discussed, such as PCA and multi-speed test. And as we have just completed our pilot testing, we are currently moving into the data collection phase of our project. So that brings us to our goals. Currently, we are hoping to get through participants and schedule data collection sessions for each of them to collect our data. We will then begin implementing our data analysis algorithms as the data starts to come in, and then start running those algorithms on the data and see if we get any results. And then, as that begins to happen, we will begin writing and drafting our senior thesis. So to help keep ourselves organized, we have divided ourselves into a few sub-teams, although we do meet twice as a whole entire team every week. The first sub-team is data analysis. They are the ones who write all the programming, which is in MATLAB, basically writing all the functions that run the data analysis. The second sub-team is writing and editing. That team is responsible for writing any grants and proposals that we have and putting anything like that through. We also have a task-oriented team who built the suit before and set up the lab before any data collection sessions. And the final sub-team is recruiting and scheduling. And they are responsible for taking calls from aspiring participants and scheduling them with us and then collaborating with the rest of the team so that we can have at least 4 members at every data collection session. We also find it really helps to keep us organized, to send out meeting agendas before every team meeting about a day in advance, and then afterwards send out team meeting minutes to sum up each team meeting. And we also find it very helpful to set deadlines for ourselves. It really helps us keep on task. Those things together just make us a much more efficient team. And so with that, just some advice and questions. Really the biggest thing you can regret about being at Gemstone is not putting enough time into finding the right project for you. If you can find a project that you're passionate about, then you will have an amazing experience at Gemstone. And with that,